What's going on, guys? This is your boy John the Liquidator coming back with a classic video. Now, the WNBA owners has truly changed everything. Guys, news is coming out that the proposal that they sent them, the new one, oh yes, it got big time changes. Now, we heard Adam Silver the other day pretty much say, y'all got until March 10th, the 11th hour is on the hour, bruh.
That energy right there, that's someone who just read a proposal that changes everything. The WNBA owners just dropped a new collective bargaining agreement offer, and the details are causing chaos across the league. Because while everyone's celebrating that first $1 million salary, almost nobody's talking about what it actually costs to get there.
Last season, you could have 2 max players and the rest basically league minimum and rookie contracts. So he's talking about this new deal. Now, in this new deal, a lot of stuff has changed from the first one. Now, shout out to Annie Costable over on Front Office Sports because she went in grave detail and nitpicked it.
March 10th. That's the deadline Adam Silver gave them, 11th hour negotiations, and this proposal has completely shifted the conversation. The league is offering a supermax salary of $1.1 million, 20% of a $5.6 million salary cap. Sounds incredible, right? First $1 million player in WNBA history. But here's what the numbers actually reveal when you break down the full roster.
Baby, inside the WNBA's proposed new economic system. Now, whenever the WNBA and the Players Union are done at the negotiating table, basketball returns, the league will likely have its first $1 million player, bruh. Now, she put here, we already talked about her, but I'm gonna make another video of it. But it goes on to say in the last 29 seasons.
Look at what he's holding up. That breakdown from Mike on Twitter shows the real problem. You could have 2 max players and the rest of your roster is basically league minimum and rookie contracts. That's not a proposal, that's a straitjacket. And this is why Indiana trading away their first-round pick last season might haunt them for years.
Salary 3-time WNBA champion Candace Parker's base salary when she played in WNBA never cracked 200,000, but she was one of the highest earners in women's sports, obviously dealing with her portfolio. Now, this right here is going to be talking in grave detail about what is about to happen, dog. It goes on to say, now the WNBA is offering a supermax base salary.
Shelly Costabile at Front Office Sports did the deep dive on this proposal, and the details get worse the more you examine them. The league is proposing 2 tiers of max contracts, Supermax at 20%, Standard Max at 17.5%. But unlike the current CBA, players wouldn't be eligible for that Supermax through sign-and-trade deals. That's a massive restriction that limits player movement and negotiating power.
With the league's revenue growth. So it's saying, hold up, somebody ain't finna get some money for somebody else to get some money? Is that's what they insinuating? Because that's what it seemed like to me. Somebody finna have to lose money so somebody could get some money. It goes on to say the league has not yet reached its line in the sand regarding the salary cap. Multiple sources has told Front Office Sports the players are proposed a salary cap of $9.5 million. That's the $10 million basically.
Here's where the math gets brutal. The standard max in this proposal is roughly $988,000. Remember, the Supermax was supposed to be $1.1 million. But that standard max, which most star players would actually qualify for, got knocked down to under $1 million. Meanwhile, the average salary across the league would be $470,000. And the minimum salary, with no distinction between veterans and players with less than 3 years experience, sits just over $200,000. Now compare that to what players were asking for. The Players Association proposed a salary cap of $9.5 million, essentially that $10 million number we've been hearing about for months. The league's counter? $5.6 million. That's not negotiation, that's rejection.
A max salary similar to the CBA according to one source familiar with the negotiations. Now, the Supermax would account for 20% of the salary cap, and the standard max, roughly $988,000, would take up to 17.5%. Unlike the current CBA, players would not be eligible to earn the Supermax salary through a sign and trade deal. Hold up. Now, at first, if I'm not mistaken,
Watch his reaction when he talks about the revenue share. The players wanted 30% of total revenue. The league's proposal caps it at 15% maximum, and they're not budging on that number. Every single report confirms the league has drawn a line in the sand on revenue sharing. 15% is the ceiling, and that's assuming revenue even hits the projections they're using to calculate these figures.
2025 was 250. We already know that. We've been covering that. Now, the average salary in the league proposed CBA is roughly at $470,000 and the minimum, with no destination between the veteran minimum and that for a player with less than 3 years of experience, would just cost over $200,000. Now, these are figures without the league's projected revenue sharing, which players will not receive more than 15% of total revenue sharing. Bro, they're not letting their foot off the gas.
Here's what makes this particularly calculated. In 2025, the Supermax accounted for roughly 16.5% of the salary cap. I.G. Wilson, four-time WNBA All-Star, made even less than that percentage. The league has spent years convincing star players to take discounts so their teams could build competitive rosters. Phoenix Mercury, Minnesota Lynx, New York Liberty. Their success was built on stars sacrificing money for depth. This new proposal eliminates that flexibility entirely. 20% of the cap goes to one player. Another 17.5% goes to a second star. That's 37.5% of your entire salary cap locked into two players before you even think about filling out the rest of your roster.
Judging off the way this thing is set up, seems like everybody want to get their money. It goes on to say in 2025, the Supermax accounted for roughly 16.5% of the salary cap, and four-time WNBA All-Star A.J. Wilson made even less than that. Now, goes on to say similarly, the success of teams like the Phoenix Mercury, Atlanta Dream, Minnesota Lynx, and New York Liberty was continuant. And damn, why that pop-up did.
The rookie scale contracts are increasing too, which sounds positive until you realize what it does to roster construction. Leonie Boston, Indiana Fever's #1 overall pick, would make roughly $541,000 in 2026. That's 9.6% of the salary cap. Under the previous CBA, the #1 pick took up 5.6%. So rookies are getting a bigger slice, stars are getting a bigger slice, and everyone else is getting squeezed into whatever's left.
Players, the percentage going to the rookie scale contracts will increase. Those perfect, for example, Leah Boston, Indiana Fever #1 overall pick. She had roughly $541,000 in 2026, according to the sources. This equates to about 9.6% of the salary cap under the previous CBA. Boston's salary took up 5.6% of the salary cap. Wow. So the last season minimum players was at 4.4%.
Look at the minimum salary calculation. Last season, minimum players took up 4.4% of the salary cap. Under this proposal, 3.6% of 5.6 million is just over 200,000. That's not growth. When you account for inflation and the increased revenue the league is generating, minimum salary players are actually taking a pay cut in real terms. The league is concentrating money at the top while everyone else fights for scraps. And here's the part that should terrify every player outside the top 15 in the league. The hard salary cap means there's no flexibility. In the NBA, teams can go over the cap to retain their own players, pay luxury tax, use exceptions. The WNBA's hard cap means once you hit that 5.6 million ceiling, you're done. No exceptions, no flexibility, no way to reward the role players who make championship teams function. Let's talk about what this means for team building, because the implications are staggering. Imagine you're a general manager trying to construct a championship roster under this system. You sign one superstar to that 20% Supermax. 1.1 million gone. You need a second star, so you offer the standard max at 17.5%. Another 988,000 gone. You're now at 2.088 million committed to two players out of a 5.6 million cap. That leaves you 3.512 million to fill out the remaining 10 roster spots. Divide that evenly, and you're paying each remaining player 351,000. Except you can't divide it evenly because rookie scale contracts are mandatory and they're taking up nearly 10% for a first-round pick. So now you're looking at multiple players making that 200,000 minimum just to stay under the cap. Compare that to how championship teams are actually built. The Las Vegas Aces won back-to-back titles with A.J. Wilson taking less money so they could afford Chelsea Gray, Kelsey Plum, and Jackie Young. All 4 of those players were making significant money, not minimum contracts. Under this new system, that roster construction becomes mathematically impossible. You'd have Wilson at the Supermax, maybe one other player at the Standard Max, and everyone else making a fraction of what they're worth. The New York Liberty made the finals with Breanna Stewart, Sabrina Ionescu, and Jonquel Jones all making substantial salaries. That's 3 former MVPs on one roster, all getting paid like stars. This proposal eliminates that possibility. You get 2 stars maximum, and the 3rd best player on your team is making minimum money or close to it. How do you convince someone like Ionescu, who could be a #1 option on another team, to accept minimum salary just to chase a championship? And here's where it gets personal for players. Let's say you're a solid starter, not a superstar but a legitimate rotation player who contributes 15 points and 6 rebounds per game. Under the old system, you might negotiate a deal worth $150,000 to $200,000, which isn't great, but it's livable. Under this proposal, teams literally cannot afford to pay you that much. They've got 37.5% locked into 2 players, another 10% in rookie contracts, and they're desperately trying to fill 8 more roster spots with $3.5 million. So they offer you $220,000. You know you're worth more. You know teams in Europe would pay you more. But if you want to play in the WNBA, you take it or you sit out. That's not negotiation, that's coercion. And the league is banking on players loving the game enough to accept below market value just to stay in the league. Think about what this does to player movement too. Sign-in trades are how stars in restricted situations gain leverage. If your team won't offer the Supermax but another team will, you force a sign-in trade. Except this proposal explicitly eliminates Supermax eligibility through sign-in trades. So if you're drafted by a small market team that won't commit that 20% to you, your only option is to play out your contract and leave in free agency. No leverage, no negotiating power, just accept what they offer or wait years to leave. The revenue sharing cap at 15% is the foundation of all these problems. The players wanted 30%, which would have given them $9.5 million to work with. At $9.5 million, you can have 2 max players and still pay everyone else fairly. At $5.6 million, you're choosing between stars and depth. You can't have both, and the league knows this. They designed it this way deliberately, because here's what the owners are really saying with this proposal. They're saying we'll create $1 million headlines to make the public think we're being generous, but we'll structure the system so that 90% of players make less than they would under a more balanced approach. They're betting that fans will see first $1 million WNBA salary and assume everyone's getting paid, when the reality is the opposite. Wealth concentration at the top, poverty wages at the bottom, and a disappearing middle class of solid rotation players. The March 10th deadline isn't arbitrary either. Adam Silver gave them that date knowing it creates pressure. Spring training for players, preseason preparation, marketing campaigns, broadcast schedules. Everything is built around the season starting on time. If negotiations drag past March 10th, the entire season gets delayed. Sponsors get nervous, broadcast partners start asking questions, and suddenly the players' union is facing pressure not just from the league, but from everyone who depends on the WNBA operating on schedule. So the league makes this take-it-or-leave-it offer, sets a deadline 5 weeks away, and waits. They know most players are making under $200,000 right now. They know offering $470,000 average salary sounds like progress. They know that $1.1 million Supermax creates headlines. And they're counting on players being desperate enough for any improvement that they'll accept a system that fundamentally limits their earning potential for the next decade. Because that's what this is really about. This isn't just about 2026 salaries. This is setting the structure for the next CBA cycle. If players accept this framework, they're locked into this top-heavy role-player punishing system for years. And when the next negotiation comes around, the owners will point to this agreement and say this is the precedent. This is what you already accepted. Why would we change it now? So here's the question every player needs to ask themselves. Is that $1.1 million headline worth sacrificing the financial security of 70% of the league? Is it worth creating a system where being the 5th best player on a championship team means making minimum wage? Is it worth giving up leverage on sign-in trades, accepting a revenue share cap at half what you asked for, and locking in a salary structure that makes team building nearly impossible? Because once you sign this deal, there's no going back, and the owners know that. That's why the proposal looks the way it does. That's why the deadline is March 10th. And that's why players better read every single line of this agreement before they put their names on it. Let me know what you think in the comments. Would you take this deal if you were in the players' union? Hit subscribe, because we're covering every development as this negotiation plays out.